Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Conversations with video series, where we speak to professors teaching economics in particularly innovative and exciting ways from all around the world. Today, we're joined by Benjamin Elsner, a professor of economics at the University College Dublin, where he's also the head of the School of Economics there. He's also a previous EEA Seed Corn Fund Award winner. And thank you for joining us today, Ben. It's great to have you. Today, we're roughly going to be speaking about your approach to teaching economics, your YouTube channel, Intuitive MetriX, and other techniques you've developed, and of course, your more general professional experience as an economist and an educator. But before we get into that, I'm sure I butchered that introduction. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What sparked your passion for economics? How did you end up teaching in Dublin? Things like that.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and great to interact with the EA, and it's wonderful teaching program that creates so many innovations and very generously funds them. What sparked my interest in economics is, I believe, part of my background. I'm a classic first generation kid whose parents had 8 years of schooling, and my upbringing as a what you would call a working class kid, without meaning this in a negative way,
Yeah.
made me aware pretty early on that there is severe inequalities. There are big differences in the opportunities people have in life. But also intergenerationally, when you see that, the likes of my parents could have a very good middle class life with only 8 years of education, and my generation and the generation following, unless you have a college degree or a very good sort of secondary education, vocational education, that gets very, very hard.
Yeah.
And questions
Cool.
like what drives or what explains these inequalities and these differences in a society at a given moment or also across generations are what really sparked my interest in economics.
Oh, that sounds super great. So why don't we dive in a little bit more about your teaching methods? And something that really stood out to us was your Intuitive Metrics YouTube channel, and as far as I'm aware, your website, which is in development or launching soon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How does it apply to your class? Uh, any insights from that?
Absolutely. So at UCD, I mainly teach econometrics at all levels from undergraduate to PhD, and have been doing so for many years here at UCD, at the European Business School, and at various other places. Um, and this is a subject I'm very passionate about because it gives people a toolbox that allows them to go out in the world and answer their own questions with data. And about 10 years ago, econometrics was probably the most hated subject and also the most unsexy subject you could possibly think of. But nowadays, with the advance of data science and data analytics, all of a sudden it sparks students' interest because they realize that it's actually very useful, and it also obviously gives them good employment opportunities later on. So it's a very critical skill, the quantitative skills that we can impart on our students here. Um, but in teaching it, when you start teaching, you take the materials of others and you tweak them. You have well-established textbooks in econometrics that are good. But what I realized is that they typically cater to one type of student, namely a student who is very versed in maths. And granted, as an economics student, that's what you should be. But not everyone can learn what is actually going on from purely from maths and maybe some
Right.
examples that are shown in textbooks. And so over the years, in interacting with students, in trying to answer their questions, I came to realize that there is obviously lots of visual learners among my
Of
students, and
course.
that's probably who I am too. And so only when I was teaching certain things in statistics and econometrics did it dawn on me, oh, so that's what it is actually about, right? I could derive the
Right.
formula, but I couldn't really embrace what it meant. So in other words, I was lacking the intuition. And I can see the same thing among my students. I teach
Right.
currently at a master's level, causal inference course, absolutely wonderful to teach. But in the second lecture, I come in, I divide them up into groups, and I give each group a question. What is X and what is it useful for? And it's classic concepts in econometrics or statistics. And what is a sampling distribution and why do we
Right.
do it? What is the central limit theorem that everyone starts shivering when they hear it? Why is it useful for the law of large numbers? And students, even though they had a full econometrics training, they have some inkling of what it might be, but I have yet to hear from anyone that the precise answer or the intuition behind any of those concepts that are so crucial for so many quantitative jobs these days and for everything we do. And so over time, I I started integrating more and more visuals into my teaching. So a lot of it, I went back to almost chalk and talk, but with an iPad
Right.
projecting it into the classroom. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden we were all forced to go online
Right.
and do our lectures online. And rather than doing my lectures live online 3 times a week, I decided I pre-record things. But the nerd in me came through, and I really enjoyed producing this to a high standard. So I that was basically my COVID pastime. I started reading up on
Okay.
how to produce these things with a green screen and lights, and my
Right.
office turned into this recording
Production
studio.
studio. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but I only shared those videos with my students, and they were like, "That's actually really good. So maybe you should upload it on YouTube." And so eventually I did, and I tagged in Twitter, which at the time was still a website that people frequented. I tagged Scott Cunningham, who wrote one of the key textbooks
Yep.
in this area.
Yep.
And he wrote a long endorsement on Twitter about this. And within an hour, I had about 500 subscribers on YouTube, and the channel really took off and was widely shared. And that to me was a remarkable experience because I did not realize just how powerful online education can be and how many people in the world are interested in that. So I
Right.
got emails from people from South America, from the Indian subcontinent, from Southeast Asia, from North America, from all parts of the world saying, thanks. I watched your lectures and they were really cool, or asking me further questions and so on. Also, many I've got one big region of
Yeah.
where I have many views that's Africa, which is phenomenal. To interact with people from all over the world
Right.
through a channel like this. And so yeah, so this was my first glimpse into the world of online education, and I'm with this new project, Intuitive MetriX, I'm trying to continue in this vein.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely online education has made access to these kind of resources much more democratic. People, like you said, around the world can access these things. What do you think are the biggest challenges in creating these visualizations? I think reflecting like personally, I've done an econometrics course, and I think where my brain starts to struggle is when we have more dimensions or more too many variables. Like I struggle to grasp those things visually, right? So what are some challenges you faced, and how are you sort of how are you building these visualizations, and how's that process been?
Yeah, so first of all, there are two things here, right? So one is what is the challenge of online education in general, and can it actually work, and can it substitute face-to-face interaction? And to my mind, to some degree it can, but it's obviously better than nothing. But it really shines once you combine it with face-to-face interaction and
Okay,
small group tutoring because people need feedback on what they're doing and
right,
so interaction and role models are extremely important and maybe there will be ways with generative AI to replace part of this need for tutoring, personal tutoring, maybe with AI assisted tools or so. I
right.
don't know. I haven't yet tried these, even though I'm quite a frequent user of generative AI for even the creation of my materials or so. But the other thing is, how can we teach concepts of economics or econometrics to students in a different way with visuals. I don't actually have a very good answer for it.
Right.
My take on it is let's just try out different things and see what students actually take to the most, or what groups of students, what types of students take to which mode of communication. So that's my new project, Intuitive MetriX, which is in development, and I'm hoping to launch it this summer, which will be targeted towards undergrad students. And it's the idea is to have a website where you have simple explanations of the most important concepts. So it will not be exhaustive
Right.
for the entire textbook, but it's the most important concepts explained by me, how I think it's explained best, explained by ChatGPT, so they don't have to go to AI. They get it already, the explanation there.
Yes.
But then explained through also visuals, apps, and videos. So the visuals are moving graphs, GIFs, right? So
Right.
where it's not just, it doesn't show you a regression line, it shows you the dots popping up and shows you how OLS finds you the right regression line
Right.
so that students develop a feel for how things work, or um, how a sampling distribution emerges. We roll 10 dice at a time, take the mean, do this again and again and again. Rather than me just explaining it, we see those actual dice rolls,
Yes.
how the distribution emerges and how the distribution becomes more narrow when we roll more dice at a time, and all these type of things. Um, so that's one thing. The other thing are apps in Shiny. They're programmed in Shiny, where students can actually interact with the data in a dashboard, right? Where they can they have different sliders for different variances, means, and can play around with the data and see how the data changes when you change different parameters. It's a bit hard to explain without showing you what it
Right.
actually is.
Yes. Yes.
But it is a bit like a typical dashboard where you say, show me A or show me B, and then the dashboard would also explain you what the difference between those two different things is. So it's basically an instant visualization of what the students put in there. And the last thing that I believe will tie it all together is actual videos of me or someone else explaining what we can learn
Okay.
from these visualizations or these dashboards and how to use them. And for some students, they may go back and not look at this at all and go back to textbooks and learn the maths, and
Right.
that's fine. Some may prefer to watch those videos and get inspiration from there, or work through the text that's there or these visualizations. And also instructors can obviously take those and include them in their own material if they so wish. So that's the idea, to have a
Okay.
one-stop shop with different methods, different modes of communication, and we'll see what students find most attractive.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. You spoke a little bit there about use of Gen AI, but even some of these visualizations, like a common critique that some people make is that um, you're spoon feeding a little bit too much, or perhaps that LLMs mean that students no longer do that process of asking the question to themselves, trying to figure it out, doing lots of searching, lots of reading, and that process of learning is being sort of evaporated, and because answers are so close to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is a valid point and a valid concern that as an educator, or also at the moment as an academic manager, I think about a lot. Just for perspective, at the moment, the School of Economics here at UCD teaches 4,000 students a year. So if we get it wrong about
Right.
anything in our education, we can cause huge damage. But if we get it right, we can also influence the lives of so many people. So this is something we think about a lot, and I think no one in this world has the perfect answer to it. I believe what one thing we think about a lot is how can we teach AI to our students, or the use of AI in a responsible and critical manner, that we include it in assignments and in projects where students have to critically reflect on what they're doing and why and what an AI spits out, and to what extent can they actually use it in a productive way. So there's various pilots going on at my university and at many other universities around the world. And there's some best practice examples already popping up that are promising, and others that tell us, ooh, we have to be a little bit careful, right? My own take is I tell my students in econometrics, use AI, right? Use
Right.
it to help you with your coding because students get way more creative. Also, a huge advantage is we have large numbers of international students whose first language isn't English, who are often brilliant at maths, but then expressing themselves in English is hard. Whereas with generative AI, I get now much better assignments,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure their grades have improved. I haven't looked at it systematically, but that's
Right.
that's the that's my impression. And so it definitely there is a lot of good things that generative AI brings us, but you are perfectly right in saying that there is this danger of shallow learning and spoon feeding and people relying on it too much. That we need to somehow limit and understand exactly what the dangers are in that respect.
Yes, it's super important to strike that balance, as you were saying, of
Precisely.
yeah. Okay. Um, Thank you very much for your time. I think that's all the questions about your teaching. And just an extra bonus question for some fun. If you weren't a professor, what career would you have chosen instead?
Ooh, that's that's an interesting. I don't think I ever thought about this. I just I would probably have become otherwise a school teacher or so.
Okay,
So
okay.
honestly, this
Maybe
was
outside of teaching.
I was always yeah. I can't really. I'm afraid
Astronaut.
no, I'd be too afraid of flying and of heights. I'd rather become a Formula One driver or so. But
Okay, okay, cool. So uh, raised to be a teacher. Um,
exactly.
okay, okay. Thank you so much, Benjamin. We can conclude the interview there.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Yes,
much for having
perfect.
me.